Trying to do my Perry clap. Welcome back. Welcome back to an episode of Risk Check Podcast. This is episode 68.
68.
Woo!
Clap it up.
The gang's back together. We're moving and grooving, shaking and baking. 2/3 of the Risk Check Pod is here. We're missing our buddy Ben, but shout out to Ben.
He took a trip to DC this weekend, so he's having some R&R time with some friends and family. So shouts out to you. We'll see you next week, Ben.
Yes, sir. So before we get into the thick of things, allow us to introduce ourselves. I am Rashawn.
I'm Perry.
And we make up 2/3 of the Risk Check Podcast. So this afternoon, we have the pleasure of hanging out with a very special guest, someone that has been a supporter of the pod since we've started.
Day one.
Always active on the Instagram, always DMing, I don't think he's missed a single Risk Check Wednesday.
There's been a few.
We started the Risk Check Wednesday, and I think I probably missed like one or two. This guy does not miss, never misses. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, I have to introduce our good friend, Mr. Trevor.
Thank you guys for having me. I really
of course,
appreciate it.
Welcome. Yes, thank you for joining us.
You flew all the way from the West Coast for this.
Yes,
all the way from LA. Had to do a little quick visit to New York. It's been a beautiful time, beautiful city. It's been a long time, so happy to be here.
I think the beautiful thing about the Risk Check Podcast is that we can have everyday people on this show. Mm-hmm. And, for Trevor, we've spoken via DM back and forth. And, the idea, for your favorite podcast or your favorite show that you listen to, there's no way in heck that you're like DMing Joe Rogan to be like, hey, dude, can I be on your show?
I would, but
probably not an answer.
but he probably wouldn't answer. Yeah. We have the luxury of Risk Check Pod ever growing and the evolution, the fact that we're able to meet our fans and listeners on the ground level, that they can participate and contribute to this hobby and this, what we've given to the community, I think is amazing.
Absolutely.
So thank you for taking the time to actually sit down with us. It's truly an honor. And let's dive into the thick of things.
Well, we got to have our
honorary Risk Check. So I guess I'll kick it off.
Man never repeats a watch.
Never repeats a watch.
For a while, I was repeating watches.
Yeah, I think that Nautilus was glued to your wrist.
Nautilus was glued to my wrist. I definitely had the emotional connection to my Cellini as well. Of course, it was the watch that I got married in. It was also, I actually acquired it a year from when I got married, and I didn't even know.
Actually, have you been on the show since you've gotten married?
I think I have.
I don't think we talked about that.
Oh, probably not. I mean, listen, we have so much volume and so much in the chamber, so many episodes that you just get lost in time.
You do get lost. There's a couple episodes we haven't put out yet, so maybe you have been. So I'm losing track. But congratulations on the wedding.
Thank you. Shout out to my wife Mary. She's amazing. So happy to tie the knot and make things real.
Sure.
That's great.
Because it's real. Perry, another
shout out to Rashawn's wife.
Yes.
What do you got on the wrist tonight?
I had to wear a new watch. This is a new watch on my wrist, not a new watch to the couch. We have shared this watch on the show, was the piece that we did a review on. Mm-hmm. But I am wearing the Blancpain Swatch.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
I guess in the words of Zach Blass, he'd call it the 51 Fathoms.
The 51 Fathoms.
So I got the 51 Fathoms on the wrist. We kind of covered it and reviewed it and shared everything we love about it and what we don't love about it. And obviously you can tell that I did not love the NATO strap. So I put my own on it.
Mm-hmm. It looks good.
I put it on like this tan NATO, and it's been weathered and worn and kind of goes with like that, old school diver aesthetic. Mm-hmm. Had to throw it on with my orange print tour hoodie. Shout out to Larry June.
Shout out to Larry.
Great watch talk from
Larry.
We're
in Halloween season. We were laughing and joking off camera. And I don't celebrate Halloween and I don't dress up, but I was like, if I were to dress up for Halloween, my costume right now is Larry June.
Good job, Larry.
Yeah, so good job to Larry. Shout out to Larry June, and hopefully we'll have him on the show.
That would be epic if you had Larry.
I agree.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
Yes.
That's soon.
Perry, you want to share?
I'll share. I am wearing a new watch.
Woo!
Yes. I was peeping at it.
Big boy watch.
We had such an amazing time in Atlanta. We had the whole crew down there recently, where we had the watch meet.
Yep.
With official CP time, Atlanta Watch Society, Watcherist, and shout out to our friend Ronaldo Nehemiah. And I came back with so many memories of the time that we spent together while working, and Preach shooting all of this content with us, and in addition to another project that we decided to start with him that is in the works. And it was such a good period that I felt like, all right, I gotta. It's funny because me and him we were leaving Atlanta, and we walked through the airport. And it took us like maybe 2 hours to get through the airport. I don't know why it was so bad leaving Atlanta.
Delays?
It wasn't delays. It was just so many people on the security line. It was crazy. Yeah.
Atlanta's kind of infamous for that.
Atlanta. This was my first time experiencing that. I traveled to Atlanta pretty frequently, and he said to me, he was like trying to explain the gravity of what we had just accomplished.
Yes.
And then he made a comment. He's like, do you realize what you just did? And I was like, bro, I'm already thinking about the next thing. But it made me think. I was like, you know what? I should live in this moment and mark the occasion with a watch.
Absolutely.
So there was a friend of mine. Shout out to John Tam, who watches the show.
Shout out to John.
Who had this piece, and we got to talking about AP. And I was joking about how me and Ben had visited AP House, and it being one of the best shopping experiences that I ever had, where they actually told me they didn't have a watch to sell me, just because they're so hospitable. And I had an amazing time, and we got to talking, and it just so happened he owned a Neo vintage reference that I was after.
Yes.
And it was the 14790 ST with the military dial, which is what I'm wearing tonight.
Woo!
This was, crazy. I don't know if I need another AP after this. This was the one I wanted.
Yes.
I've always wanted this from the first time I ever saw this watch.
Yeah.
To me, it's just so quirky. It's so weird. I love the military aesthetic of the dial. I love how you have these like broad sword hands. You have this like arrow seconds hand. The dial has Audemars Piguet on it and Royal Oak stamped on it, but in different typefaces. So it looks like it's double stamped. It's weird. Yeah. It's weird. And then when you see this thing, like when the loom is in action, it's like, oh my God.
Super thin too.
It's super thin and lightweight.
What year is that
this is roughly a 90s piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm absolutely in love with it. I haven't taken it off in a couple of days. I got a really great price on it. Too good to pass up. And we were able to make this happen fairly quickly. And so.
That's great. I instantly saw it. You're wearing a sweatshirt, but it was peaking.
And live for the peak.
It's a statement piece. Oh my goodness.
Man, I absolutely love this thing. This thing is amazing. And I had it checked out. It's running, I think, just about 3 seconds fast, but
that's pretty good.
For a vintage, that's incredible.
That's fine.
I'll take it. Shout out to John Tam. Thank you for helping make this happen.
Yes, sir.
What are you wearing, my friend?
I'm wearing my Tudor Submariner, circa 1992. It is this 79090 reference number. It's a watch that obviously I love neo vintage. You guys know that.
Yes.
Rolex and Tudor, that's kind of my wheelhouse. Those are the brands that I love the most. But this piece is so fascinating because it comes from an era when Rolex and Tudor were very intertwined.
Yes.
Now, of course, they're very separate. But one is called the Submariner. Rolex would never let Tudor use that name anymore.
Yes.
It just would not happen. Okay.
Not
it says Submariner on the dial in beautiful, beautiful script. Okay.
Yes.
Then it's got a Rolex crown.
Yeah.
Because at this time, the pieces were made, I don't know if you could say side by side, but very much in-house together. It's a Rolex case. It's just so, it's interesting because at this stage, I only own one Rolex today, but this piece is very much a Rolex, but it's also a Tudor. So you get the best of both.
Yeah.
And it's so light. Sometimes I forget it's even on the wrist.
Yeah.
What sets it apart from the other Submariners is at this time, Rolex had moved to the dial with the white gold indices.
Yes.
This is a matte dial. It's just painted on, but it's so beautiful in the patina. It's one of my favorites right now.
It's a beautiful piece. I have a thing for Tudor subs.
Yeah. And really good condition too.
It's very minty.
Where did you acquire it? If you could share.
Yeah, so this watch came from my good buddy Ken Jacobs at Wanna Buy a Watch out in Los Angeles.
Nice.
So Ken and I have a special relationship, and this piece he sourced for me. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a special piece.
39
millimeters, roughly maybe 11.6 or so millimeters on the width. But also, if you can see in the light, the crystal, which was acrylic at this point, even though Rolex had switched to using sapphire, is raised. Yeah. So it kind of, you see the lip that, and then it's got the Cyclops, of course, for the date. It's just, this watch is, I think, my favorite right now.
Okay.
It's good. Yeah, it's a good piece.
I think it's hard to say, but I think it is.
There's a 90s Tudor subs that are coming back too. Like,
they are.
More people are starting to pay attention to them because you can still find many of them in great condition.
Yes.
Which is really good. And then the deeper you get into it, you start to see all of those like weird 90s colors that they did. Some more rare than others, but there's a lot of interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
There is. And again, 1992 roughly. You know that because it says T Swiss T. They switched to T Swiss made T in 1993. But on these pieces, they were doing things that weren't of the period, right?
Yes.
It's like acrylic crystal, really the bracelet, you know, that rattle that you get with the old kind of pieces. This thing rattles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Jingle jangle.
It's at the jingle jangle. The clasp is gigantic.
Yeah.
It's like this. You know what I mean?
No,
but I love that.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes these watches special.
That's amazing.
Because they were doing things that they wanted to do.
Yes.
Well, I think they're still doing that now.
Yeah.
But they have a different identity now.
Yeah.
Modern Tudor, I love.
Yes.
But it's not this.
Yes.
No, it's not the same.
I agree. And you have brought a few timepieces for us to kind of check out and you can share your emotional connection.
Yeah.
You already jumped to the one on your wrist, your absolute favorite. And
today. That could it could be different next week.
Yes. I think we kind of all channel that. Like there was a point in time when like I wouldn't take off a specific timepiece, and I was like, "That's my favorite watch." Or someone's like, "What's your favorite brand to collect?" And you're like, "It's this." Etc. So before we dive into your collection, I kind of want to talk about who you are,
absolutely,
your origin story, and kind of how you got into this hobby.
So I've always loved watches. Yes. I mean, even from the time 5, 6, 7 years old, definitely remember always having appreciation for watches. My dad always wore a watch, but he was never into like the crazy brands. I remember very, very vividly him getting a Fossil. Do you remember when Fossil had a moment back in the late 90s?
Yeah.
Big.
So, and they used to come in like a 10, was it like a 10?
There was like a little canister thing that they came in.
So I remember my dad going to the mall and getting a Fossil, and I thought that was cool. Yeah. I thought that was special. Yeah. And obviously it wasn't a Rolex, it wasn't an AP or anything like that, but it was something that he was interested in. But he didn't really have a desire for watches. It was more just a utility thing, like, oh, this is the watch I wear.
It's funny that you mentioned that too, because it's bringing back some memories for me in terms of what that period was like. And now thinking about it, the 90s for watches was like a real tool watch
It
moment.
was.
Yeah, it was.
There were watches that weren't just about the flex or the fact that it was made with amazing craftsmanship. And you had these brands like even Guess. And I know Rashawn and I have talked about this, but like my first watch was a Guess pocket watch. And it was a pocket watch that has
I had no idea that they made pocket watches.
Yeah, no, they were making pocket in the late 90s, they were making pocket watches, and it had like a little eye on it, and it lit up. You could just hit the top, and
You have to send us a picture of that.
I know. I should have brought it. It doesn't light up anymore, but it still works. I mean, it's quartz, of course, so you just replace the battery. But I mean, and I think that's what's also special is that I got this watch in maybe 1997. It still works.
Wow.
But that's the thing about watches when they're made well. And this is a child's watch.
Yes.
Probably did not cost much money, but it still works.
Yeah.
And that is special. But growing up, I wasn't exposed to crazy watches, nothing like that. The craziest watch that I was exposed to at that time was like a Movado Museum.
Yes.
And a good friend of ours who's passed away, he wore a museum. And every time I saw it, I was like, I want that watch.
Yeah.
It's like,
good watch.
to me, when I looked at it, I was like, man, it's the design is nice. It's simple. It's beautiful. And one of my gateway watches, when I had a little bit of money, was to get a museum.
Yes.
And I still wear it. I call it my suit watch.
Yes.
So when I wear a suit, I wear the museum. And whether I'm wearing a sub or a Tudor chronograph or a museum, they all mean the same to me. And I think not losing that or still having that appreciation is important, because every watch doesn't have to be some crazy watch. You know what I mean? It just has to mean something to you.
Yeah. I was just talking to my wife, ironically, about that. Understanding when enough is enough. And in this hobby, there is times where it's not enough watches, or my watch isn't good enough to be in this space.
That's right.
And we have the opportunity to kind of share that story, because it's very synonymous. There's so many people that listen to us, like, Perry's wearing an AP. Like,
exactly.
like, that's crazy. I mean,
it is crazy.
Like, that's big. But and if Perry's in a certain room with someone else, they feel like they can't stand next to him.
That's
but
true.
obviously, for what he contributes to what we contribute to the community, like, he'd freak out the same way as if you were wearing a museum while he's got, a piece like that on, which, is not common.
I think the cool thing is too, right, is you talked about, your late friend who owned this piece. And I always think back to how amazing and how cool it is that when certain people that you admire wear a watch, it'll make you want that watch.
Yes.
And that, to me, is a big thing in a through line all over my life, right? Things that I now like. The question is why?
Yes.
Oh, it's because this person I looked up to,
Yeah.
he drove a BMW, or he did this, or he wore a museum. And you have those seminal moments that shape your point of view.
Yeah.
And because one thing that bothers me that I try not to be this way is, like, a lot of people like to act like they're self-made.
Sure.
Right? I had no help. Yeah,
Yes.
I had no help. It was all me. I did it all. My point of view is all me. And that's just not true. And
No,
we
it's
know
not
that.
at all.
And you guys are humble enough to understand that.
Yes.
But it's like, my taste is not me. My taste is what influenced me and what I picked up on and that resonated with me. And I like to appreciate those things. And I like to appreciate the past and to see, okay, well, at 6 years old, my dad got a Fossil. When I was 13, he bought a Mercedes. When I was this, he did this. And oh, that's why I like Mercedes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I like watches.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just because he never had a Rolex, now I own a Rolex. And it's like, well, why do I like Rolex? Well, because I like things that are well made and I appreciate watches. It all stems from somewhere.
Yeah.
So that kind of segues into kind of what I wanted to talk about, like your early days. Obviously, you're originally from Charlotte.
Yes.
So originally from Charlotte, and now you've migrated to the West Coast. And of course, you had some dreams and aspirations and places that you wanted to be. Can you talk about, where you're from, how that kind of shaped you, and like, your interest in design and art and cars and watches, and then taking that to LA, because LA is kind of like that big city and it's
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? Like it's all of those things.
I have to say a lot of it comes from my upbringing, as you're mentioning, but a lot of it is external. You know, my dad has great tastes, likes nice things, but I will say, and all credit to him, he was very much like, I want to just provide for my kids, and you know, I want to give them opportunities I didn't have.
Yes.
So a lot of the things that resonated with me came from outside sources. My friend's dad or my friend's mom, whatever it may be. But like there were very seminal moments that just stick with you. And obviously I love cars. But a friend of mine in middle school, her name is Alex, and her dad, I'll never forget this. He drove a 2002 BMW M3 and it was red over red. Just think about that.
Red
over red. Who's doing that in 2002? The thing was unreal.
It's so polarizing.
It was, but it resonated with me. And now a lot of times, and you see this a lot in the Porsche world, the crazy colors today is what people want.
Yes.
But in 1998, if you ordered your Porsche in purple over blue, people would be like, oh, why did you do
what is that?
Right. But now today it's like, oh, that's a one of one. That's purple over blue. Nobody has that. Yeah, because nobody was doing that.
Yes.
And that's a seminal thing. My good friend Obi, his dad was a huge car collector.
Yeah.
He still has a lot of his cars, but just listen to this. In the early 2000s, at the same time, he had a Plymouth Prowler. You remember those?
I remember those. Yeah,
those were hot.
That was the Cash Money movie.
Yes. Cash Money. He had an M5.
Wow.
He had a Porsche 911 C4S. And there's one more I'm forgetting, but he still has the Porsche 911.
Yes.
And, you know, maybe one day, if I'm fortunate enough, maybe it'll be mine. Who knows? I'd love to buy it.
Yes.
But those type of things don't happen anymore.
Yeah.
People having these cars and having the foresight to keep them.
Yes.
But like his car taste definitely influenced me. I could keep naming different people, but like those type of experiences where you're seeing these cars and they speak to you.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, my dad used to take my brother and I down to the Porsche dealership and we would play That's My Car. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I would want that one with the Arctic silver over blue. No, I do that one in speed yellow. Like those are seminal moments that stick with you. And I would get all the brochures and I'd take the brochures home and this is crazy. Porsche used to have the brochures where they would have the paint samples and the paint would be like a little, like a little square and you would feel it and some of the paint would feel differently and you're looking at just the craftsmanship. Those are the things that speak to me.
It's funny that you say that. So I have a buddy who actually collects vintage car catalogs and he has a few Porsche and he has a few Ferrari ones. So I'll snap some photos and I'll send it to you.
I want to see that.
I'll mail them over to the West Coast.
I want to see that.
But the funny thing about Wrist Check Pod is that we can go into, you know, watches and then share the hobbies. You know, Perry collects art and has an amazing art collection. You have a car collection and have quite a few cars. Stepping away from the subject of watches, can you share the cars that you do own and what's like very special to you?
So maybe I'll start with what I like best. I don't know. We'll see. But I have a 2006 Porsche 911. It's the base Carrera.
Nice.
It's in seal gray over black. I have a white 2004 Porsche 911 convertible. It's white over Savannah.
You post those on the gram.
I do. But it's not.
He'd be like Porsche steering wheel with the Tudor sub. He'd be like,
but for me, those are the moments. It's not even. I understand visually it looks like a flex, and maybe it is, but it's me appreciating that moment in time because this is real talk. That moment in time where I'm driving the 911 and I'm taking the wrist shot. That's what life is to me.
Yes.
An hour from there, I could be thinking life's terrible. You know what I mean? So you have to appreciate those moments. Yeah. And that's really where it's coming from. But yes, I understand it could be more of a thing where it's like you're putting the brands together, but it's because I love them and they're machines that speak to me.
Yes.
Also have a white over tan. This is I have to tell this story, but SL 500. It's a 2001 Mercedes-Benz SL 500. And then lastly, my newest addition is a 2003. By the way, listen to all these years. They're all right. And this is the period in which I was coming of age.
Yes.
And these are the cars I
That
wanted.
you were paying attention to, yeah.
Exactly. I have a 2003 Corvette Z06.
Nice.
50th anniversary, Electron Blue. But let me tell the story about this Mercedes. Because this is something that's very fascinating to me. In the early 2000s, even in the late 90s, the SL 500 was kind of the I made it car.
Yes.
And some of the things that come to my mind are Tupac featuring it in the some of his music videos. That would have been more in the mid 90s, but same body style, that SL. You guys know the movie Any Given Sunday?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's like one of my favorite movies. At the end of Any Given Sunday, Jamie Foxx goes back to his neighborhood and he's driving a Carmine. No, maybe it's not Carmine. Scratch that. He's driving, we'll just say, a red SL 500.
Yes.
At the end.
Yes.
You think about other music videos. It was the kind of go-to car.
Sure.
And the car is fascinating because if you don't spec it right, it can look very feminine. It kind of has a very feminine vibe, but
because the size a little bit,
the size, but also like the wheels, the bumpers, the side skirts, all that. But they had a thing called the SL AMG package. Yeah. If you put that AMG package on it, like mine has, it's not feminine anymore. It's a German bruiser.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It's like, it's brawny.
Yes.
The wheels, the lip on them, it's got like a 3-inch lip, and that AMG wheel with the 5 spokes.
Yeah.
So anyway, the year is 2000.
Yes.
I'm a young guy, and I grew up in Charlotte, of course, but the Carolina Panthers were kind of hot at that time. They were a new franchise. I think their first season was in '96, and a lot of the Panthers at that time, they drove that car.
Wow.
And these names probably won't mean anything to some of you, but maybe they do to the viewers. Eric Davis had one. Okay. Michael Bates had one. His was in the gold color.
Wow.
Eric's was in white. So Eric Davis had a white over tan SL 500 from 2000, and it said bump and run. He was a cornerback. And that in football language, bump and run is like when you're coming off the snap and you have the little period of time where you can kind of tussle with the receiver before you reach a period where it'll be a penalty. Yes. That's what his plate said. Wow. I own that car now.
That's good.
And that's a car that, not his.
Oh, I was like, okay.
No.
Big time.
No. Not his, but I'm saying as a kid,
yes,
I would see him driving it.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, wow.
Yes.
But see, that's what I mean. Those are the moments where now that car at that time costs, $100,000, which in today's money is about $180,000. It doesn't cost that anymore. It costs a fraction of that. Yeah. And so I like I gravitate toward those type of value propositions where it's like, wow, this car is in amazing condition. That car gets so many looks, and I'm always like, your car costs way more than mine. But people pull up to it and they're like, oh wow, like give me thumbs up. It's like, this thing costs less than a Toyota Camry.
Wow. So speaking of race cars, you have a chronograph here.
I do.
You have a Tudor chrono.
Yes.
I can't see from here, but is this a Tiger?
No. So that is the predecessor to the Tiger.
Nice.
So the Tiger would be in reference to when they had their brand partnership with Tiger Woods.
They did all those colors.
Yes. They did orange, yellow. I think it was even a pink one, maybe.
Yeah.
Those are starting to come back too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is the chronograph that was made in roughly the early 90s. It's the reference number 79180. This is the watch that a lot of people compare. I don't, but a lot of people compare to the Rolex. I believe it is 6542. Don't quote me. But around that time of the Daytona, the 4-digit Daytonas, where you have that kind of cream subdials, the registers. But one thing that's great about this watch is not only does it have all the functionality of a chronograph, it has a date function. And it's also very hefty.
It's a thick watch.
It's a thick watch.
When did you acquire it?
I've had this one for about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, this one also came from Ken.
So your buddy Ken? He's a big Tudor guy.
His wheelhouse is Rolex and Tudor, Cartier. Nice. Like I said, he owns Wanna Buy a Watch out in LA. And this is not exactly the pieces that he is most well known for. He's really well known for sourcing great subs, great Cartier pieces. Cartier is really hot right now, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we talk to Tristan. Shout out to Tristan Walker all the time about Cartier pieces. Like, I mean, this guy's a nut. He exclusively collects Cartier watches and won't look to anything else.
Cartier is a weakness for me, honestly. I don't know a lot about Cartier. I know the big pieces, the Santos, the Tank.
Yeah.
I know those, but like I'm nowhere near being, an expert on Cartier. But I am, like I say, an expert. I know a little bit about vintage Tudor. And one thing that is interesting about this watch is it's not perfect. If you look at the tachometer, there's some missing ink.
It's kind of rubbed out a little bit.
It is. But you know what? That kind of thing's not going to bother me. Like, does it bother me? Actually, yes. But am I going to fix it? No. Because it is what it is.
Yes.
It's been polished. It has some flaws, but it's a great watch. And if you look at the crown, Perry, it's Rolex. If you look at the case, it's Rolex. It's a heavy oyster bracelet. That is a Rolex bracelet.
That's not the jangly.
That's the heavy. That's the heavy boy.
This is the one. You know what's funny about this is that
this is jangly. You know what I mean?
It looks like a Daytona.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a Daytona. The only reason why it doesn't feel like a Daytona is because obviously they used a different movement.
Yeah.
Also because it has the date feature, so that thickness throws it off.
Yeah.
But when you look at it head on, the dial, I know the reference you're talking about, it's the same dial.
Yes.
This is a Daytona dial, but like turned around.
That's probably why it like it's a little rub off, a little imperfections.
are the same. It's actually really interesting to like handle this.
Yeah. Speaking of the movement, real quick, it's the Valjoux 7750. So it's a source movement, which, at the time, that's exactly what, not at the time in 1993, but right before that, right before 1988, when the Daytona, actually, excuse me, I'm getting tongue tied. The Daytona was still using the Zenith movement in 1998. So that would have been, 1988. So it's the same idea of using a source movement.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yes. No, that's a solid piece. And it channels exactly like who you are as a collector for pieces that have past lives.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of brings me to my next question into diving into, what was the biggest inspiration into, wanting vintage? Because you exclusively collect vintage.
Yes.
You collect vintage everything. It's so easy for someone like yourself to easily buy new.
Sure.
What is it that, grounds you to stick to your guns to say, I only want to collect vintage watches?
That's an interesting question. I think it has to do with just maybe a yearning for the past of that time period.
Yes.
Of feeling like this is a time machine, right? When I get in the Corvette, I feel like it's 2003.
Yeah.
And I remember when that car came out, it's almost like an appreciation for what's been done, which obviously I have. And that's one of my guiding principles. But I think it's honestly because so much intentionality was given to these pieces, so much thought. And I'm not saying they don't do that now, but they feel different. And I know it's maybe not something you can equate to a number or to this is a black and white.
Yeah.
It's a feeling.
Yeah.
And when you have this piece on, I think what you said is very important and resonates with me. It had a past life.
Yes.
What I like to think about, honestly, is someone going to the store.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't even, I don't know much about if Tudor had their own presence in the United States in 1992, but like someone going to a watch store, they walk in, they're excited. They're going to spend a lot of money that they've worked for, and they bought this watch. Yeah. Someone bought this watch new. Yes. I don't know who they were. Yes. I don't know anything about them, but they enjoyed it. And for that moment in time, it was what they wanted, and they felt good about it. And it was an accomplishment. Yeah. I now have the same piece, and I feel the same way. And this thing lives on. Yeah. Even though that person may not, or that moment in time is gone, their youth is gone, whatever it may be, this is still here.
Yeah.
And it's going to be here. This will still be here.
It's funny that you mentioned that. And I kind of want to ask, this is kind of like a sidebar, because I know for me personally, because I collect a lot of things, and you know, I have recently picked up a pair of like Jordan 8s, the playoffs, which I'm wearing.
Yeah, I was about to say, you know what you're wearing?
But I acquired them in London.
Wow.
And in the States.
Rashawn goes to the UK to get his Jordans.
but in that, right, it was a specific moment in time. And I actually, for things that I collect, and Mary hates this, like, I keep my receipts.
That's cool.
Do you try to seek like pieces that maybe have like original form of payment or things like that? Is that like something that's, I mean, this is a weird question.
No. I get that. And all of that would be icing on the cake. But no, I mean, yes, would it be great? Obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm not at a place where it's like, oh, it has to be this, which I think is another thing to say. And I think we talked about this with the AP that Perry has. You know, one of the other things I like to talk about is that some of these things can be accessible.
Yeah.
Even if you're thinking it's not accessible. Now, and I'm not saying, you know, these things are affordable. I would never say that.
Yes.
But it's a lot easier, if you will, to get into a Tudor sub than it is some crazy Royal Oak. And I think having appreciation for the fact that you can have great design, you can have great pieces, but not at a level where you're talking about having to take a second mortgage out on your home or something. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a big thing in the watch world now.
It's true.
It is true.
Seriously, and listen to this. With the modern thing, here's the other piece. You're asking, why do you gravitate towards these things? Well, it's all because of what I like, but also you can't walk into Rolex and get a Submariner. We know that.
Very fair.
So it's like, okay, well, even if I wanted a modern sub, good luck. You have to go to the gray market, which I have no problem with. Obviously, all these pieces came from the gray market. But that is also the thing, that not only is it a perception of what I like design-wise, but also practicalities of these things, right? I'm not getting on some waiting list for a watch that I may never get. You know what I mean? I'm not interested in that. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm with you.
No, I mean, we're on the same page with that.
Yeah.
And you actually have a Submariner here.
I do. So I will tell you this. This is my Grail watch.
Yes.
Now, I know that's funny and juxtaposed with the fact that I just said this is my favorite watch.
Yes.
But this can still be true. This is my Grail watch. This is a Rolex Submariner 14060M, M for modified. This piece is circa 2010, time only. This is the essence of, to me, what a dive watch should be. And there's multiple iterations of the Submariner, but this is very special to me because it's the end of the run for the Rolex Submariner before it became the modern Rolex Submariner. So roughly 2012, 2013, the Submariner switched to now using
this
the
was
different
just
bezel.
the ceramic
So
bezel.
this is a aluminum bezel, where they switch to ceramic bezel. This piece is so much more understated than the current pieces. And don't get me wrong, the current pieces are lovely. They're very nice, but they're so flashy.
Yeah.
You know, it's you're right to your point. I think we view it that way because, you know, when you were talking about earlier, your admiration for certain people in your life and the effect that they had on you in terms of your lens and your perspective and how you were, you know, sort of a composite of all of these ideas that were presented to you. I think to, you know, a piece like this, and I think about, you're talking about vintage. Why is it that like I myself am so attracted to vintage, much, you know, to the question that you asked him? And it's because we grew up with this.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
We didn't grow up with the ceramic stuff. The ceramic stuff is, you know, now maybe our children or those who are just getting, you know, accustomed to seeing Rolexes now, you know, it's like, if you see a ceramic bezel Submariner, it's the first one you ever saw, the first one you ever touched, I get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I grew up seeing these.
Yes.
And so this is what Rolex is to me. And so I totally understand your perspective and hearing you talk about, you know, these people and how you're a composite of all these ideas. it's like now just clicking. I'm like, no, this is exactly the reason why.
Yeah.
This is our dad. This is our grandfather, our uncle, you know, those other figures in our life who meant something to us. And then we glanced at the wrist and we're like, what's that?
Yeah,
and you saw something like this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Another thing, touching off what you said, Perry, this piece, albeit this is the end of the run, you know?
Yes.
That Submariner ran roughly from 1990, we'll call it, to 2012 in that same kind of visual setup.
Yeah.
All of that.
It still looks
that's a
very
long
modern.
time.
It still looks very modern.
That's
this
22 years.
This is when they updated the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 14060 circa 1990, they updated the case. They changed the bezel slightly. The movement changed. Now again, I said this is the M for modified.
Yes.
This is also very special in a way, right? It's not crazy special, but it's special because it has the updated movement.
Yes.
So it was now COCS certified.
Yes.
And it has 4 lines of text.
Yes.
Okay. All of
Instead
the
of superlative,
14060s usually have 2 lines of text.
Yeah.
This one has the 4 lines because it's officially certified as a chronometer.
Yeah.
Which speaks to me because if you go back to the early 80s when they were chronometers, they had the 4 lines of text. So they kind of moved away from it. They came back to it. This was a short run. I believe these ran from roughly 07 until 2012.
Yeah.
This is just like the ultimate Submariner for me.
Yes.
That's just me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But that's my point of view.
There's something interesting going on here too. I love how flush the bezel is to the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like pancaked.
Yeah.
Which I don't recall seeing that on earlier references.
Yeah. And Trevor, you know, for the timepieces that we are reviewing that you're sharing, I mean, condition, I have to say, is superb.
Wow, that means a lot. I appreciate that.
You treat these pieces very well, and we've covered on the show. And I think this is the perfect question for someone like yourself that is a vintage collector. And we've had Eric Wynn, I mean, the vintage guru.
The guru.
Like
$1 million calling now on
the
Esquire.
guy, he's the guy on the top of the mountain. Like,
talk to me nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like that Esquire, you know, the Esquire article definitely put him at the top of the mountain. So shout out to Eric, and we miss you and we love you and we want you back on the show.
A lot of angry dealers out there.
A lot of angry dealers. We might stir something up. But you know, I want to ask you, as a collector, and I seen it on Instagram. I don't remember who posted it, but it was like a pyramid, and it was like, if you could choose 2, it was like cost, rarity, and then condition. So I think for you, if you look at that pyramid, what do you value more? Is it like it being very rare, but like, you know, maybe the cost is whatever, or et cetera, please elaborate if you can.
Probably condition. You always want to buy, and again, these things are relative, and let us not always get away from the fact they cost money.
Yes.
And they cost a lot of money.
Yes.
So if you can, condition.
Yes.
Then, of course, I'm not going to say cost is necessarily number 1, but it's always there.
Yeah.
But then for rarity is not that important to me. I'm going to be completely honest at this stage.
Yes.
Now, you change as a collector. You change what value, is most valuable to you.
Yes.
But right now, it's not even a rarity thing, because like that, and that's why I was kind of struggling to say, well, the 4 line is rare. It's not really that rare.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're talking about Rolex. We all know this. They make hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of these watches.
Yes.
So it's silly to talk about, oh, this is rare. It's not.
Yes.
But you don't see many of these. I see a ton of Submariners in the world. I very rarely see the 4 line into the run aluminum bezel sub. I see a lot of the ceramic pieces. I do.
Yeah.
But to go back to your question, condition. It's always condition first.
Yeah.
With in your budget.
Yes.
So I will say when I bought,
there's varying degrees of condition.
yeah, there's varying degrees, right? If you're talking about Eric Wynn, you're talking about the ultimate condition, right? He's gonna have the best of the best of the best in the best condition, but you're gonna pay for it.
Yes.
I was just talking to a buddy of mine in the watch world, and I really very much love the Zenith Cover Girl. And Eric had one. He may still have it a few months ago, and this thing was priced at the price of what it commands.
Yes.
But I'm thinking like, I don't know. It's like the condition. No, and that's the real thing, right? Because you're like, I want this.
Yes.
I desire it. Do I think it's worth this amount of money to me?
Yes.
No. But if you're talking about condition, that is what's going to drive the price a lot of times. And I think that's where sometimes people get in trouble because they'll see a dealer that has a sub for $5,000.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, that's a great price. Well, there's probably a reason.
Yeah, look under the hood.
It's at $5,000.
Yeah.
And I think that varying degree is important. But I would say to any listener, to anyone wanting to get into this game or buy a piece or maybe expand their collection, buy the best condition for what you can afford.
Yes.
And if you can't afford what it is, wait. That's the best advice I can give. Wait. Because people, including me, are very impatient, right? They want it now. They want to get that thing. No. You have to have a plan and you have to wait for it. But if you want to talk about condition, this last one is the one you want to see.
Please. Please.
There is a slight thing, which I'll talk about a little bit. But this piece is very, very, very special to me because it's from 1988.
Wow.
It's a 1988 Galet Adanac. Adanac is Canada spelled backwards. It's a watch that was made in conjunction with the U.S. Air Force and the Canadian Air Force. Galet had that contract at the time. And if you look visually, it's very reminiscent of the Benris Type 2.
Say it looks like a Type 2.
Which I love. Ooh, if I could own a... Oh, my goodness. If I could... I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
I mean, I can get you one immediately.
You have one?
No, I don't have one, but I'll connect you with someone who can.
You might want to, slide with that. If I could get an original Benris Type 2, I would be very happy. But this watch, cool. Aside from what I'll point out,
it's so good,
is in amazing condition. And so the case is asymmetrical, is 42.5 millimeters. It's sandblasted, which is one of the reasons why the case looks so nice.
Yeah. I was going to say it's blasted.
It's sandblasted.
And you can see it from afar, even with Perry handling it.
Yeah.
You're like, man, they did that case really effing good.
Oh, yeah,
They
totally.
did 30 years ago.
And if you look at the back, if you take the NATO off, it's stamped. So it's April 1988 production.
Sure,
Someone, and again, this is me. I own it. I love these things. Someone in the military in 1988 got this in their whatever you call production of this is your gear. And for whatever reason, I don't know. I'll never know. Kept it pristine.
Yes.
This watch isn't going to look like this if you actually wore it and if you went into battle or if you did anything with it. But there's one thing on it, on the crystal. So if you look, Perry, around the 2 o'clock hour on the crystal, there is a scratch. And there's a scratch there because I'll tell you, I hurt my back very, very badly a couple years ago. And I fell because my back literally just seized up. And I was wearing this watch and I fell to the ground and I scraped it. And before I looked at it, I was like, man, not only is my back completely messed up, but I just messed up my watch. Perry, that watch went on the concrete and just as it is, and the only thing you can see is that little scuff on the crystal.
Wow.
And when I looked at it, I was like, man, I can't believe that's all that happened, even though I scraped this watch on concrete.
That's a tank.
It is. But that's what it was meant for. It was meant for battle.
Yes.
And it's quartz.
Yes.
Which I have no problem with.
Because you can see you can see on the case back where you can replace the battery.
You can see, it's got the
little lip,
the little hatch.
Little hatch,
for the battery. And I'm not one of these snobs that's going to say I can't wear a quartz watch. I love a great quartz watch.
Yes.
So it's quartz. It keeps great time. Look at how the second hand just bounces. when it moves. You know,
I like the case shape too, because at the crown, there's a little bit of like this exaggeration of like an angular, because you can tell it kind of has a bit of like, so it has a bit of that like late 70s into the 80s influence.
That's what I was going to say too, because it's like a 70s skin diver.
Exactly.
It's all there. It's all there.
It's all there. And the coolest thing is, to your point, and I think, you know, this is amazing to have you here to share your story, because you're speaking to the relevance of time.
Absolutely.
And it's something that, you know, I think for people that don't understand this hobby or don't really know what the hoopla is when we talk about these watches, it's like you have to know what you're looking at.
That's right.
Like, you have to understand relevance. You have to understand the provenance. You have to understand, like, so that piece being something that a soldier or, you know, someone would have worn in the military is amazing. You go back to the history of Rolex being on military bases. Yep. You know, and even diving into fashion, when you think of, you know, military jackets that had blood chits on them. And if you were a pilot and you were shot out of the sky, you would show this chit to be like, hey, listen, I am actually a friend of this country. Right. Please, I don't speak the language, but I don't want to be POW. Exactly. Or if you did buy a Rolex, you use that as your chit if you were behind enemy lines. It's like, hey, dude, I got a Rolex. He's like, very good.
I don't know what accent that was.
I don't know what it was either.
But you know what? You also just hit on something important about, and I think this speaks to what Rolex has become, which again, I'm not going to say anything ill will, you know, nothing bad about that, but it's different. Yes. I will say a lot of times in the world, I like to spot watches. And sometimes if I think the watch is a certain kind of watch and the person looks approachable, I'll talk to them about the watch. Yeah. I don't ever do that with modern pieces, if I'm being completely frank, because that's a whole nother wheelhouse. But I saw a guy wearing a 610, so it would be a date Submariner from roughly the mid 80s. And I just said to him very casual, I said, I like your watch. It's a great sub. And he lit up. And you know what he said? He said, I bought this at my military base in 1986. He told me everything. He's like, 1986. Wow. It cost $700. I still have the receipt. I wear it every day. This thing was in phenomenal condition. Wow. And like, to have the time of passage, one owner, like that's a piece that has its own provenance just based off of him. Yes. Not even that it was rare, because it's not. They made tons of those pieces, but that he bought it in Germany, that he was the original owner, that he's loved it, that he has original receipt. You know, every now and then you'll see, you know, that show on PBS, I think it's
Antiques Roadshow.
Exactly, Antiques Roadshow. Someone will come in and they'll be like, you know, I got this Rolex. I got this one in 68. Couldn't much afford it at the time. My wife thought I was crazy. And the guy's like, this watch is worth $100,000. And the guy's like, oh, I can't believe it. You know, it's like,
we all doing accents on it.
It's so good.
But that's the thing, right? These pieces, and you guys talk about this, they used to be tools.
Yes. Yeah.
And they used to be things that had more than just flashy bezels and beautiful executed crystals. Yeah. They were pieces that could help you. Yeah. In that if you needed to keep 2 time zones, you could. Yeah. And you had a reason to. And it wasn't because you had a smartphone that you could double check everything with.
Yeah.
You were gonna ask?
No, go ahead.
So this is actually perfect, because it segues into how important I think community is. The fact that you can, you know, randomly see someone in the street and point them out, and you guys can have like the craziest of conversation. It's funny too, because I was hanging out with Patrick. Shout out to Patrick. He's a good friend of ours. We were at the Ming event yesterday, and we just stopped in with his wife to Hermes.
Wow.
And there was a gentleman that was wearing a Beauvais. And Perry, you know, we kind of see eye to eye on Beauvais and like what they're contributing and like how like hot they are.
It's a great brand. They make amazing watches.
Amazing watches. And I was wondering, I was like, what kind of gentleman is this guy for him to walk into Hermes wearing a Beauvais? Because he could wear a Patek, he could wear an AP.
It's still a very appropriate environment.
But when you think of those kind of places, like you're thinking about the hot shot wearing, the hot, like he's got a solid gold Daytona.
I think Beauvais, I think like Weekend in Monaco.
Oh, he's definitely like, he's like feet up on the boat somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I want to ask you, in your opinion, how important do you feel, with the ever changing of the watch community and now, people of color being represented in the space, do you feel that, we have a voice? Do you think that it needs to be louder? How important is it to you, and elaborate on?
I would say the voice definitely needs to be louder. And I think for many years in all types of advertising, and I'm rewatching Mad Men right now, so maybe this is influencing it a bit.
I love that series.
Mad Men is amazing.
It's one of my favorite shows.
Rewatch it. It's amazing.
Yes.
But for many, many years, advertisers of all sorts, and I'm not even saying it's the brands. The brands have their own role to play, but advertising was meant to focus on a certain group. And that group, I'm not going to opine on why it is. Obviously, there's many reasons for why, but it didn't include us.
Yes.
It didn't include Black men, Black women. And I think these brands are realizing, man, there's so much out there. There's so much more that we haven't tapped into. Yeah. And our conversation right now, and this is why, honestly, I've been a listener from the beginning, because you guys are tapping into something that resonates with me. And if it resonates with me, probably resonates with other people of color, other Black men who like this. And honestly, Rashawn, it's such an untapped market.
Yes.
There is so much potential. And I believe in the future, these pieces, I hope, will be thought of as just watches for all, instead of like when you think of certain watches, you're like, you might have feelings or misgivings about who can wear that or whose watch is that for. It's for everyone.
Yes.
And I don't think it has to be a thing where the brands are saying, oh, we want to get into the black market. It doesn't have to be like explicit. It just has to be. But it could.
That was great.
But it could. But it could.
No, but
it's just like,
that's how,
this is for all.
That is what happens.
But that's what happens.
Typically what happens.
Yes.
Someone comes along, they say, oh my God, this demographic is spending so much money. We need to get into the black market.
Yes.
Tap into the black market.
Yes.
And it's like, whoa, slow down, guys. Time out. Pause.
Yeah.
Like, we're already here.
Yes.
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 We are already here.
You can't tap into it. What you have to do is
Thank
you
you.
have to understand and accept the fact that we are here.
Yes.
And let's all take part of the conversation.
Yes.
That's exactly right. And I will say from afar, I see this. Hopefully I can say this, but
Sure,
you all haven't gone to Oris events. Seeing what Oris is doing,
Yes.
I think is important.
Yes.
And I think other brands,
Couldn't agree with you more. I love Oris. Shout out to VJ.
Shout out to
Josh
VJ.
Shanks.
other brands, if they just took just a little bit of effort, oh my goodness, it could be beautiful. But I think the day will come, who knows when it'll be, but the day will come where, and again, in the watch world, it is very much homogenous, honestly. I went to a watch event in LA a few months ago, and there was one other black man there. One. Probably a room of 100 men and some women. Oh, that's another thing.
Yes.
Diversity is not just race. Women very much also slept on.
Yes.
But it just kind of made me feel, I didn't feel ostracized at all. I felt welcomed.
Yeah.
But it just didn't feel great.
Yeah.
It's like, this doesn't make any sense.
And I think in many cases, because we've all experienced the same thing. I hate to talk about it in a way where it seems like it's intentional.
I don't think it's intentional.
And I know you don't. I know that's not what you're expressing, which is why I'm saying. But what I think what happens is a lot of organizations or companies have existed or operated from a perspective where they never they never felt that they had to have a conversation with people outside of their immediate circle or cultural milieu, right? And not that we're ostracizing people, but because we don't regularly engage people that don't look like us about watches, we don't even know that there's interest there. And now what we're starting to see, at least in New York, is you have companies or organizations, much like Complecto, shout out to Al and CP Time, where they're saying, no, we have to make an effort to make sure that people know we are inclusive. And because you do have to make an effort. Because the watch world in itself, whether you're going to a watch meet or you're walking into a retailer, it can be intimidating. And it can be intimidating no matter where you exist on the economic spectrum. Right? Someone could walk into a retailer and I've seen it before. I have friends. Multi-millionaires. Very successful people. Walk in, I don't know. And it's like, dude, you could buy anything you want here, but they still feel uncomfortable.
That's right.
Right? And it's very interesting. And I think, to your point, one of the things that we're trying to do is continue to amplify those voices. The important thing about what we're doing, highlighting collectors like yourself, is being able to show the world that, what you think of a watch collector, maybe you should challenge those ideas and those ideas should change.
That's exactly right. And I think to your point also, you don't have to be a multimillionaire.
Exactly.
Surprise, I'm not. So, you don't have to, but there's so much potential there. And again, I will say this very candidly. It doesn't have to be Rolex. It doesn't have to be Tudor. It doesn't have to be AP. No. You can design, and great watches can be obtained at all price points.
100%.
And I think all price points are important. And as you all talk about, and as I appreciate, I think the watch world also is coming to a reckoning of like, you don't have to have the most expensive piece to be someone who's taken seriously or someone who has an opinion. And I think that, like you're saying, you're in a room with someone and someone's wearing an all gold, AP, and you're like, do I deserve to be here? Yes, is the answer.
Of course you do.
Yes.
And I think that guy with the AP is probably interested in your Seiko or whatever it is you're wearing.
Absolutely.
You know
100%.
And these things, they don't go away, and they do kind of permeate your brain, because sometimes I will say, I like Seiko. I have a couple Seikos. I have a neo vintage Seiko Turtle. And if I'm wearing that sometimes and I see someone with a great Rolex on, I may think twice about talking to that person, because they're going to look at my wrist and they're going to say, oh, wow. Oh, he's wearing a Seiko. What does he know about this? And people make those judgments. But my hope is that as we expand our reach and the podcast grows and you have us in more positions where you're out and about, that those type of judgments will subside. Because you say, oh, wow. And if the guy asks, I would say, oh, yeah, I have Seiko, but I also have a few Tudor, and I have Omega, and I have Rolex. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just a thing of money. And often, a lot of times, I think that's what it becomes. But it's about the design, and it's about the pieces. And I'm just as much geeked over, seeing a neo-vintage Seiko as I am seeing this amazing AP that you have on your wrist. Honestly. And like now I might go home and consider, and I think for me, honestly, some of the crazy stuff like the Pateks and APs, what else? Maybe all those things. Those are out of my wheelhouse right now, but I'm not saying they will be forever. And I think having that growth and having that understanding of it doesn't have to happen today is very important, because it doesn't all happen at once. And having these pieces does not all happen at once. And I think sometimes we get lost in this Instagram world, this social media world of like, why don't I have an AP? Why don't I have a Patek? And it's like, hold on.
Yeah, I know. Slow down. Bro.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes a while.
An Oris.
Yes.
Yes.
It does.
I just got an Oris this year.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite watches. It's a travel time. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I love the name is evading me right now, but that beautiful Oris that has the 24-hour, the calendar hand.
Oh, the big date.
The pointer.
The pointer date.
Pointer date. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
That one in the copper.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, sitting here today, I want one of those.
But they did one to commemorate both Roberto Clemente, and they just did one with Hank Aaron.
I did see that. I saw that.
Where people need to get on too, vintage Oris bangs.
Vintage Oris bangs.
That all this vintage Oris that's like popping up out of nowhere. I'm like, where the hell were you guys 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Like, you guys just holding on to all this stuff? This stuff is fire.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It is. And I have to say, what a way to close this episode. To kind of speak on the relevance of what we do here. I feel like this was a commemoration episode.
No, it absolutely is, because speaking from the heart, as a small time collector, I appreciate you calling me a collector, but I'm keep it real.
You have 2 watches you're collecting.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not going to front and act like I'm some big timer, because I'm not, but I like watches and I like what you guys have done here. And I think getting this message out and letting it be known that this is a whole area that people have a desire for, to talk about watches and to engage in them at a level of where we're talking about reference numbers like it's nothing, Well,
that's more.
That's
you can't ask me to spit a reference number.
I wouldn't say that's just me, because Perry was dropping some reference numbers.
Perry got some numbers too.
I got some numbers.
Numbers. That was good.
That is what it's about, and having this space and platform means a lot to not just me, but a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Man, thank you. We appreciate you.
This definitely wraps up episode 68. Just to say it again, such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. This was a treat. You guys know where to find us. You can find us exclusively on wristcheckpod.com. Shout out to Wolf and Ben and Perry and myself for collaborating with them to create the shuttle. So if you don't have one already,
wristcheckpod.com.
wristcheckpod.com.
222.
222, baby. Peace.
See ya.